Welcome to Real to Real. Hello, I'm Sean Hughescamp.
And I'm Monsignor Charles Minoff. Since we last met and talked about abortion, I had the opportunity to read Jean Garton's Who Broke the Baby, and I'm more devastated than ever. But on the other side of that same problem is that of infertility. People who desire babies are not able to have them, Sean.
That's true. And as we'll see later in our discussion, infertility can lead couples to emotional exhaustion or even desperation. And our guest tonight will discuss the problems of infertility and the moral implications as seen by the Catholic Church.
Our feature tonight will introduce us to 4 young geniuses and their parents who claim they made their children intelligent. In the short subjects, Liz Andre has a review of Sophie's Choice, and we'll hear from the monks of Western Priory.
The rate of infertility in this country is on the rise, affecting almost 1 out of every 5 couples. Medical science answers this problem with such things as surrogate mothering, in vitro fertilization, artificial insemination even. And yet, we turn to religious organizations to get the moral perspective on these advances. Tonight, to discuss this issue with us is Father Albert Jenneman, Professor of Philosophy at St. Joseph's University, and Joan McGowan, co-president of Resolve of Philadelphia and author of Waiting, The Hope and Frustration of the Childless Couple. Father Jenneman, I'd like to turn to you and ask you, what is the Judeo-Christian attitude towards the medical advances that are being espoused today for infertility?
I think the first thing we have to recognize is that we have a set of moral principles, and we must subject these new advances in medical science to a testing in terms of those moral principles. One of the very basic principles, of course, is that there is a human right to procreation, but it's not an absolute right. It's a conditioned right. It's a relative right. And while we may speak much of human rights, we must recognize that they are not absolute. They depend on certain conditions. This leads into another principle that the end doesn't justify the means. So although procreation is a very laudable purpose, nevertheless, that doesn't mean that any means would be morally acceptable in terms of leading to that end.
And then, Father Jenneman, what is the specific church position then with regard to infertility testing, and all of the advances now made?
Well, one of the points I think we should keep in mind is that something called the technological imperative. And by that we mean that just because we can do something doesn't mean that we ought to do it or are able to do it morally. Therefore, what we have to analyze is, are we doing something that is opposed to the natural goals of mankind? Are we doing something that is immoral in terms of the Judeo-Christian moral principles that the Catholic Church in particular has set up over a period of years? It's not something you can answer right away. Sometimes the church may seem to be a little slow moving, but the church has to be very careful what's happening and to see the moral import in these medical principles that these medical practices, rather, that are coming to the fore.
It must be very difficult for a couple who experiences infertility to know that medicine is making such advancement on it, and yet how to deal in terms with discovery, am I or am I not infertile? And so especially would be difficult, I think, for the male.
Yes, that's
how do we
true.
Determine this,
With the female, there are very few moral problems involved. However, with the male, the main problem, I think, morally speaking, would be how do you get a specimen of the male semen? The church has consistently taught that masturbation is not an acceptably moral practice, even in terms of trying to find out what's wrong with the couple. So that there are other means that are available. One is the use of a perforated condom, And there are other medical means also that the Church does find acceptable. So it's not that the Church forbids any kind of use of obtaining the male specimen, but limits the way in which it's done.
Give us some specifics, Father. How does the Church feel, for example, about artificial insemination or surrogate mothering?
Well, those are difficult questions. Procreation, as you know, prior to Vatican Council, was always spoken of as the primary end of marriage. So the Church has always been very strong in seeing a link between procreation and the marital state. However, what we call the natural means of obtaining a new life would be through sexual intercourse. Therefore, I see it as a moral problem when you separate the procreative act from the marital act, the sexual act. And in artificial insemination, what you really are doing is bringing about procreation in the laboratory and therefore separating it from the marital act. And inasmuch as you have that separation, that poses a serious problem, a moral problem, to the Church's concept of what ought to be happening in terms of a relationship between the marital act and the procreative act.
It must be harrowing, Joan, for couples. I'm sure you meet them who are experiencing infertility. How do you ever reach them? How do they come to you?
Well, Resolve Incorporated is a national nonprofit organization located in Boston. We have 42 local chapters in 36 different states. We offer medical referrals, education, and support. We don't decide for a couple what's right for them. We only offer to them the information that we have concerning infertility treatments, concerning infertility tests, and concerning alternatives to natural parenting should that be the course a couple has to take, such as adoption. We do get a lot of couples, all of our couples, that emotionally are wrought, that have had their fill of this problem, but still have a will to go on to obtain conception if possible. We offer support through our monthly meetings at Pennsylvania Hospital. We also offer support through small support groups in which 5 or 6 couples meet once a week for 10 weeks and are run by trained support group leaders, by trained professionals.
Joan, what are some of the medical advances that you see that have been made?
I guess the biggest medical advancement, and I'm not so certain how recent or how current it is, but is a procedure called a laparoscopy. It's an exploratory surgery. It's a very short procedure in which a doctor is able, through the use of a laparoscope, which is a telescope-like device, to insert through the navel to view all of the reproductive organs. It's being used now as a diagnostic tool, and as probably the best diagnostic tool that there is. From that, they're able to determine whether ovulatory induction drugs are necessary, whether further surgery is necessary. Often this is just to look to see whether or not there is a problem, or if there's a suspicion that there's a problem, and then the need to do further, more extensive surgery.
If there are couples out there that would like to get in touch with you, where can they reach you?
We have a post office box. Somebody can write, if necessary, to Resolve Incorporated, Post Office Box 681, Bryn Mawr, PA 19010, and somebody will, probably myself or my other co-president, Jill Seidman, will be in touch with the person.
As we can see, infertility is a painful problem that medical science is trying to deal with as efficiently as possible. But all of us have to look at these medical advances from the moral perspective of Christians and make decisions that are consistent with that tradition. I'd like to thank Joan and thank Father Gentleman for being with us this evening, and of course, thank Monsignor Minor too. Stay tuned for Liz Andre's review of Sophie's Choice and a song by the monks of Western Priory.
Hi, I'm Liz Andre. This week on Arts Review, we'll take a look at the film Sophie's Choice. It's based on the novel by William Styron, set in 1947 Brooklyn. Peter MacNicol stars as Stingo and Kevin Kline plays Nathan, but their acting is overshadowed by the gripping performance of Meryl Streep as Sophie. She portrays a Polish survivor of a World War II concentration camp. Sophie's Choice is an examination of total despair. The film does not plot along in depression, however. Rather, it alternates between scenes of tenderness and horror. The balance of artistic elements make it all the more poignant, and the ending unbearable. Sophie's personality is a tragic fascination. We watch layer after layer of her complex character unfold. She is a woman whose faith and hope is shattered by the atrocities of Nazism. Sophie carries a crushing guilt for having been the only one in her family to survive the Holocaust, and for the decisions she had to make. Deep down, she doesn't believe she deserves a happy life.
Just long enough to get dinner started? You look much better.
Yeah, what did you do here? Looks beautiful.
We're having calf's liver, prepared Veneziano, in a special vinaigrette sauce, loaded with iron, and leeks filled with iron. Also, will improve the timbre of your voice.
You know, Nero had leeks served to him every day to deepen his voice
No, I didn't know that.
so that he could croon while he had Seneca drawn and quartered.
Let me help you there.
No, you're not to move. Ah. Will Madame taste the wine?
Château Margaux Grand Cru, 1937. My God.
Special day. Special wine.
That explains part of Sophie's attachment to Nathan, her Jewish lover. His actions swing from cruelty to gentle devotion. Nathan, like Sophie, leads a life of emotional torment. To escape his bitterness and frustration, he leads Sophie into beautiful, intoxicating flights of fantasy. Together they delight in poetry and picnics, passion and play acting, childlike escape from their personal pain.
You know, when you live a good life, like a saint, and then you die, that must be what they make you to drink in paradise.
Stingo is a young, innocent Southern boy who comes to New York to experience life. He hopes the move will help to fire his imagination in his career as a writer. Sophie and Nathan have experienced things in life beyond the capacity of imagination. Although we can barely understand them, Stingo accepts and loves Nathan and Sophie just as they are, as real people living in a difficult world. Sophie and Nathan can no longer face the reality of life at all. Sophie's Choice is rated R. There is some coarse language and sexual situations. It's not a film for people who are easily depressed, and certainly not a movie for children. The magnificent and heart-rending performance of Meryl Streep reminds the viewer of how cruelly man often treats his fellow man. I'm Liz Andre, and that's this week's Arts Review.
Go up to the mountain, joyful bearer of good news. Shout with a full voice, our God is near. Those who hope in the Lord find their strength renewed. They soar like an eagle they fly. Go up to the mountain, joyful bearer of good news. Shout with a full voice, our God is near. Those who hope in the Lord never grow weary. never lose heart, should they run or walk. Go up to the mountain, joyful bearer of good news. Shout with a full voice, our God is near. See, the Lord is coming with strength, like a shepherd leading the flock. Go up to the mountain, joyful bearer of good news. Shout with a full voice, our God is near. Yahweh, come to us, and our hearts will resound with such gladness all the days of our life. Go up to the mountain, joyful bearer of good news. Shout with a full voice, our God is near.
At what age should we begin our children's education? Is kindergarten too young? Is first grade too old? Well, we met a couple in Ohio who say that they began teaching their children even before they were born, and they claim they're raising geniuses.
Well, some people feel that people brag if they have a genius in the family. Now, some people think that genius means a certain thing, like a musical genius, a mathematical genius, a science genius. But I think real genius is if you have a child that is well-versed in all the academics.
Joseph Susedic's last job was as a maintenance mechanic. His wife, Jitsuka, used to be a teacher in Japan. The couple has been blessed with 4 exceptionally talented daughters with extremely high intelligence levels. All of them are considered geniuses. Having moved the family several years ago from Anaheim, California to rural Cambridge, Ohio, the Susedics claim that their daughters' incredible mental facilities are not due to genetics.
Why, we attribute that to the environment we set up for them in teaching them academics from the 5th month of pregnancy on. We think that a child is very intelligent while it's still a fetus. It has a brain that can really store knowledge. It has nothing to do but tune in on the parent as it teaches. And it stores all this knowledge in its memory banks. It has a lot of retention. And this enabled, especially in our daughters, to speak 3 and 4 words at 3 weeks, full sentences at 3 months. and to be able to read little children's books at 9 months of age, and junior high school books by the time they were a year and a half old. My background is not that of a psychologist. It's not that of a doctor of education. I was a maintenance mechanic on my last job, but let's just say that we used a lot of uncommon sense in devising a new method of education that could be very instrumental in bringing about a superior bunch of children into the world.
Their method of education consists of teaching the children through love at a very early age. Joseph recalls his grandmother telling him that back in Poland, they experimented with teaching their young while still in the womb. Jitsuka taught phonics in Japan, so the couple combined their techniques, and together they started teaching their daughters during the 5th month of pregnancy, a time when they believed the brain to have a lot of retention. Nestled on nearly 215 plush acres in New Concord, Ohio, Muskingum College has an enrollment of more than 1,000 students. One of them is Susan Secetic, who's in the pre-med program. Susan is 12 years old.
Well, in this magma, and let's say this is our sample now, rubidium and strontium were homogenized.
Well, it's fun, and you can really do a lot of things. College is really a lot different than the other schools, and I think it's more free.
But according to the IQ test they have right now, the human intelligence is developed before school age. For example, Susan got over 170. Well, IQ test, the top is 160.
Well, Susan had some anxious moments when she was going to public school in the 5th and 6th grade level at the age of 5. Children used to be a little jealous and push her down on the playground. She came home with holes in the knees of her pantyhose where she had been pushed down onto the rough stones on the playground. We taught her how to get out of it gracefully. This is what made us realize that you have to teach children that you're going to train to be of higher intellect, how to deal with jealousy, how to deal with the conflicts in life.
Intelligent children can understand other normal children very well. What is wrong is normal children cannot understand extremely gifted children.
So you have to sort of educate them when the situation starts arising, create it to your own liking instead of letting somebody force a situation upon you.
I think it would be different for her because she's got to adapt to people being a lot older than her and probably being a little more mature, but as far as intelligence, I think she can really stand up to anyone here.
Yeah, I guess when you really think about it, it does. It makes you feel if she can do it when she's so young, you should be able to do it too.
The Secetic's lives revolve around their children. But now that Susan, Stephanie, Stacy, and Joanna are all in school, the parents can devote more time to writing. Their current project is the creation of a curriculum which they hope will be the catalyst for setting up new schools for intelligent children.
They're hoping that a lot of people will teach their children the way we've taught ours, and that all these children will be able to relate to one another in a very normal way, instead of just having 4 genius-type children of our own. We hope that the whole world will follow suit and start turning out genius children of their own, due to the fact that we believe very firmly and strongly that it is environment and not genetics. Genetics helps in a way for better physical appearance, better physical endurance, but the mental part, the intellect, is developed by environment. Well, my wife develops, besides writing, she develops little challenges, little games of intellect for the children when they get home from school. Some little challenge to keep them guessing, to keep them going, to instill a looking forward feeling for the next day or the next evening, something mom's got to get ready for them. And they look forward to it. It's a lot of fun.
Although life is a constant learning process for the Susetic children, that process is also reversed because every time the parents research new material for their daughters, they also broaden their own horizons. But not all of their time is spent learning. They are a family, and as a family, they have a lot of fun together.
Well, whatever we do together. We haven't had a babysitter yet, and Susan is 12, so that should answer that question pretty well. We enjoy taking them with us, and we go someplace. If we can't take them, we don't go, or if it's something that is imperative, we be there. One of us will go, and one will be with the children. And I think this is the way the family life should be.
With the advent of modern electronic technology and the era of computerized depersonalization, it's rewarding to see that family values and family love still play a large role in our society.
It is fascinating to observe that family in its process of education for children, but I must say I have some misgivings about engineering and developing a genius style in that form.
Yes, I agree, Monsignor. And I think you made a very interesting observation when we looked at the piece earlier. You said that an educational process like this would indeed have to be done with love. And I think if I were Mr. Susetic, I would have had to give my little girl a kiss before she went on that school bus. Family life, even for the Susetics, is very demanding. And next week, our guests will discuss family life and other problems for the divorced and separated single parent.
We'll also have a behind-the-scenes look at the people behind Kermit, Miss Piggy, and all the other Muppets. And in our short segments, you'll learn about the new condensed version of the Bible published by Reader's Digest. We hope you can join us next week. And for now, goodbye and God bless you.
Thanks for being with us. Good night.
The paper, what kind of stuff?